Ooh, you know what? I just had it this morning. I have it if you want me to grab it.
I'll get it. Joy, do you
All
want
right.
to kick us off? You want to do the introductions?
Darn it. Let me get back to that screen. Here I am doing too many things at once, I guess. So this is a small group so far, huh? We got 9 of us and three hosts. So hello, everybody. This is MVP Office Hours. If you're calling in for something else, then you're in for a treat because we're going to talk about Salesforce struggles. So today is January 24th, 2020, and Jared, Dale, Squire, and I will be your hosts today. I think Jared is going to pop in later perhaps, but he's not on right now. And you can mention us on Twitter, MVP Office Hours. You can also see when we post recordings and any other notes there. But you can also find Jared, Dale, Squire, and I on Twitter. And you can go to mvpofficehours.info for more information. Also, you can find us on the Success Community, and I'm sure the link is over there somewhere.
I actually have not put that in there.
No? Okay. But, you know, that's the here and there of things. So, Dale, is there anything I'm missing?
No. Well, I mean, calling out the upcoming community events led by the community, and then user groups.
Yeah. So we have lots of events coming up. Specifically, right after this call, because we're going to end early at 1:45 so that everyone can get to the admin preview on time. Dale has put the link in the chat, salesforce.com/video, and some numbers. You guys can go check out the chat. And then, let's see, I got to minimize some stuff. I got so much going on my screen. Trailhead's got events and webinars calendar for Salesforce and community-led events. And then the upcoming Dreamin' events, we've got Japan Dreamin', Snowforce, Albanian Dreamin', Banff Dreamin', Skiforce, London's Calling, and Southeast Dreamin'. So no matter where you are, hopefully something's close. And then community groups for in-person and virtual collaborations and learning opportunities. There's links at the bottom of that welcome screen. I think that covers all of our stuff. And then does anyone have any questions to start us off with, or anything else that we need to start with, Dale?
No. Like Joy mentioned, we are going to cut early today because we are in that most festive one of 3 times a year with the release previews and everything for Spring 20. The developer preview was a couple of hours ago. The admin preview starts in about 40 minutes. So we know a lot of you are probably going to want to join that. So we're going to be very conscientious and aware of that. So be sure to cut over to that at 1:45. But other than that, yeah, bring on the questions.
Don't forget to unmute yourself if you have a question.
Marty has her hand raised. Marty, you're on mute.
Unmute now. Sorry.
There we go. That's okay.
I hate when people do that. So has anyone had the experience where you log into Salesforce, everything's fine, and go to log into Data Loader, and it says you can't authorize your login? I was successfully able to use Data Loader IO, and I can log into Salesforce. Just anybody ever had that experience?
Generally,
yeah.
Generally, you'll need your security token appended to the end of your password if that's the error message that you're getting.
Agreed.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
Or the other culprit could be, are you sure you're logging in production to production versus sandbox to sandbox?
Yeah, that I'm sure of, but I'll bet you're right on the token. Okay, thanks very much.
Hey, Marty, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
How was your experience with Data Loader IO?
I like Data Loader IO. The issue is, as a free user, you have a limit on the number of records. And so I was doing something really simple with products and I needed to do it really fast. So I just quickly did it using that. But I like it. I mean, it's an open question. I don't know if anybody knows anything more than I do. When it gets merged. Go ahead.
Yeah, super open question. I was having trouble with Data Loader on my machine, and just kind of threw up my hands and went to IO, and I was pleasantly surprised. So
I've used it for other reasons, and I like it. Rumors are they're all going to merge, and the question is what remains as part of the standard product.
Right. I think Data Loader IO is handled by MuleSoft, and so it'll be
right. But MuleSoft
and I think
is
it's probably more. Yes, I think it's more stable than the versioning that was going on to individual machines. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks.
Let's see. We have another. Yeah.
Marty, for the authentication, I think it probably is the token, but depending on where you're working from or if there's been any security changes, sometimes firewalls and proxies will block connection. So even though you're doing it right, it still won't let you through. So don't give up if you think you're doing it right. There could be one other layer that's keeping you out of it.
Yep. Thank you.
Addie has their hand raised. Addie?
Hey, Adi, correct.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
I know you guys are in the mood of viewing the early developer preview, and I watched that one also. It's great. But something related to his interesting question I have is the before flows are bulkified?
Yeah. Is there any bulkification other than the native bulkification in flows? I'm not honestly sure.
It's because of the reason it is I know we were once upon a time we were on the Apex triggers, and we moved that lot of code from Apex triggers to process builders because it is more user friendly to read the code. And then now we want to move from process builder into the before flow because it's performance and other things. But the only thing is that bulkified the code. And I never seen anything like that, but explained if you guys know it or follow up.
I know there's quite a few of like governors in place and limits in place to the flow in general, and so by definition it's bulkified because it's got a hard stop.
Okay, so in general, all flows are bulkified. So this is also bulkified. You think that the before flow also bulkified?
Bulkified is a big trigger word, so I don't want to oversell that. I guess what I mean by it is the flows are by definition going to stop if you hit critical limits, like you can't get a runaway. Bulkification, from when you think about Apex, when you started referencing triggers in Apex, bulkification is clearly a design decision, and we would have to do a little bit digging, unless Taylor was more what actually is included in it's not really bulkified, but in like the process improvement of a flow or a process.
Yeah. I mean, so at baseline, and I may misspeak, they are not bulkified, but you can and should bulkify. Yes. But then still to Squire's point, you're going to hit limits that sometimes you can predict and other times you can't. It just depends on what all you're trying to do, how many different objects, like in an object relationship, you're trying to do things to.
I have a before lead triggers. It's very complicated logic is there before lead. When the lead comes in and when leads got updated, we have a lot of logic to figure out what franchises we assign and what user to be auto-routed and all those things.
Well, okay, so you said the trigger word, trigger.
Yeah, it is the trigger
Um,
really before trigger of the lead. Now, if we move that code, that complicated code into the before flow, is that going to be bulkified? That's the my raise hand.
well, I mean, it depends on it. Will it be bulkified? Well, yes, if you bulkify it. Like
Oh,
but
okay.
then you're going to have to consider that you're not only getting into the need to bulkify and how much will the flow be able to handle, but you're going to be running basically end to end of the order of execution process because of where process builders and flows and then validation rules and programmatic coming first. Like you're going to be spinning quite a few gears here that you may have the most perfectly bulkified flow in a vacuum,
Yeah.
but then as soon as that gets implemented into the overall process, either it wreaks havoc or the rest of the process wreaks havoc on it, and you won't know until you get it all drawn out and then actually connected in a semi-real situation.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if I could add one last item, I would really question why you'd want to go from the trigger to a flow, other than visibility and declarative interaction. If the class and the trigger that's written is well written and maybe just requires a refactor, you're probably better off sticking with it unless you've got a real business case to convert it.
How much data are you dealing with? You said it's a lead trigger.
Yeah, we have a lot of automated process between each and every object. A lot of automated process. You guys can't even imagine that. So the leads come from the Pardot, and the leads will get updated from the information from Pardot. Because we have a marketing engine going on. So every time when the marketing process is going on, the maybe thousands of leads gets updated.
And so that right there, like, so Squire is what I would call total solution architect, technical architect. He knows how everything works.
Try, yeah.
I'm a start at core, work your way out as far as you can, and I can do flow process builder.
Yeah.
Would love to learn code, so I normally argue go declarative as much as possible. But as soon as you said Pardot, I got off the declarative chair.
I see. Okay.
You're dealing with an integration. You're dealing. Yes. You said thousands of leads. Yeah, you're gonna probably want to stick in trigger land and figure out how you can simplify, refactor.
Yep.
I think you're going to be disappointed with declarative in that scenario.
Okay, I agree with that. I think because that's the reason. What happens is we get every time when we run the campaign for 5,000 leads, then we get those leads get updated into back to Salesforce through integration, and integration sends from 200 to 500 records in a batch process.
Yeah,
and then
that's dodgy for declarative.
And then those will be created behind the scene. The task, every activity is considered to be a task in the Salesforce, and those tasks will be accumulated back to the lead, saying that the latest activity. There are so much automated processes there behind the scenes.
Yeah, I agree with Dale. I think
okay.
better off factoring and improving just the code base in general and not transition. So yeah.
Okay, got it.
You agree with me, and I agree with you. Therefore, you agree with you.
Thank you.
Is that what you just said?
I don't know. We got a circular in there somewhere, but
it's a programming language. If A equal to B and B equal to C means A equal to C.
There you go. Squire is right. Moving on.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Looks like we've got one other hand up. Farah.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, we can.
Hi. Great. So I am actually a consultant with, I work with nonprofit organizations, and I've helped lots of organizations kind of do program management inside Salesforce, but I'm currently working on a scenario, and I kind of had a question around the data model. So the organization tracks programs that are sort of programs for individuals. So it would be like creating a relationship between a program and a contact. And then they also track programs that are running at schools where they don't really necessarily care about individual student data, so not at the contact level, but they want to track program information at the school level, so at the account level. So when I've been creating the data model, I'm kind of struggling a little bit because I want to reuse the objects as much as possible and kind of keep them under one umbrella, but the type of data that will be tracked and even the lookup that will be tracked will be very different. So I don't know if I could share my screen, but I kind of had two scenarios of how I was thinking about the data model, and I wanted to get your input on what you think makes better sense.
Yeah, I think sharing would be great. Before you start,
Okay.
are you working on a specific cloud already, or are you working with nonprofit or just a straight up force, like a platform?
So this is just the NPSP implementation on top of Salesforce. They're a brand new customer, so they haven't really done any work in Salesforce. So we're kind of setting up their original data model. Okay, so I can go ahead and share.
Yeah.
Joy, can you convert over?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's saying that someone else is sharing. Okay,
there you
great.
go.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I kind of, lay out the scenario that they want to track program participant information for in-house programs at the contact level, and then school and aggregate information for in-school programs. And there are no overlaps between in-house and in-school programs. So totally two different types of programs. So to kind of give you a sense of what they're tracking, they want to track now and what they want to track in the future. So at the sort of student level, for the in-house programs, they want to track how many students per cohort, like at the basic level. But then eventually they want to track attendance and outcomes, again, at the student level, and also application and individual outcomes. And as the school level, they want to track how many schools are participating in a particular program, the number of students at each school, so sort of aggregate data at the account level. And they want to track more like survey data, again, aggregate number of students impacted, sort of aggregate data. So that's the scenario. And the first option that I came up with, I was thinking that since the data that they're tracking is so different for the different types of programs, these would be different objects. So in-house program, and of course we can, debate the naming, but that would be a separate object, and the school program would be a separate object, and what connects the two would be a separate type of sort of a participation object. But because they're kind of connecting two types of objects, that it would be different. So that was kind of one model. And then the other model, where I'm trying to reuse as much as possible, would be sort of a program object with the record type of in school and out of school. And then the participation object would still be different because the participation object is kind of connecting a different type of object to the program. But then again, the program object itself, like it's still tracking, like if you're doing one type of record type, it's tracking very different fields and very different data than another. So there's not a lot of overlap when it comes to the data, other than like the name of the program, maybe the year, as well as like the type and subtype. So still, I mean, it kind of makes me debate that maybe I should stick to a very different type of model where I'm not trying to force a reuse situation. That's all I had.
Interesting. So I think just a little more color just to see if it could trigger anything. So is there any point where a contact on an in-house program is associated with an also part of a program? We need to be able to aggregate those two data lines.
No, they won't, because they don't care at the school level. They do market their in-house programs to the school participants, as well as other schools that are not even part of their programs. So they do recruit and market, but they don't need to track anything at the contact level when it comes to school programs. So these are for smaller age groups. So they have smaller age groups, and then they have 18 and above programs, and those are the ones that they like to track in the in-house programs. So no, they wouldn't need to know which student was part of this program.
And then similarly, is there any reason, maybe not from their future-looking statement, where they'd want to do some aggregation of program comparisons, like in schools versus in houses? Like somehow do they overlap from an analytic perspective, or are they really independent?
No. Yeah, from everything I know from speaking to them and through the discovery process, there isn't any kind of overlap. The only overlap is that program participants in in-house programs can move from one in-house program to the next in-house program, so they can have like a pathway of programs, but that's not related to the in-school programs. Here they care more about the type of school that they're serving, so they care about like the percentage of free and reduced lunch students that the school is serving, those kinds of metrics, than anything else, and like pre and post survey, which is sort of aggregate data.
Hi, this is Adi here. If you guys okay, I can suggest something different than these two models.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, something else would be totally appreciated.
There is a concept called a polymorphic object. What is that? Is you basically take the program participation as a custom one object and pointing to look up to a contact and look up to an account, which basically is same object. You have two different lookups. One is look up to the contact when a school program, when the in-house program is there, you will assign the contact value. When that is the same object has the in-school program, then you will assign the account object. Basically, all you need is...
Just to clarify, are you talking about the same lookup field having multiple different types?
No, so two different lookup fields on an object, and you have two different record types, which is record type one indicating that is in-house program participation, another record type indicating the in-school program participation. And for record type one, you will have a contact will be populated on that object saying that what contact this in-house program will be. And when it is the in-school program record type, you will make sure you have the account participated. There it is. You're doing that, yeah. And then you link the account to that, and both are having a like a master list to what all the programs are available. And then a simple validation make sure the right record type has the right lookup got filled up. There it is, and then that will work.
Yep.
I think that's helpful.
Yeah. And then basically the record type value to do the validations, and any different pick list values by different values for the different programs. So the record type will control it.
Okay, because on the that makes sense.
The same reporting architecture for your program participation model. And it gives you a growth opportunity to say what happens when there's a new type of program that includes a contacts. You can use leverage the same model to have a third record type that allows you to combine in new ways without having a new object every time.
So I think I did consider this. The only reason I was kind of stepping away from that was because then when you're creating a program at the program level, you kind of decide what kind of a record type it is. So you know that when you're creating the program, it's in school or in-house. But then when you're creating the participation record, you again have to kind of decide, unless, I don't know if there's a way to limit when you are on a one type of record type, the children should also be a certain type of record type. It just seemed like asking the user to like think of a lot when they're doing this sort of manually. Does that kind of make sense? Like it just seems odd to ask them to pick.
No, what happens is this program participation object, once you have two record types on that, you can have the two different layouts. Those two different layouts will restrict what are all the fields related to the in-house program. You will have that, even though it's the same object, you will only bring the fields related to that record type to that screen. And other
and I guess that kind of makes sense, because when they're creating a program participation record, they could probably be, if they're at the account level or at the contact level, you give them those particular options. So you say that they can only, you can create a action that is only going to create a particular record type. I guess I was thinking from a program perspective, but you're right. Even from the program perspective, they would only create a generic program participation record, right? No, you could have another action depending on the page layout. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Okay, no, I think I like this a lot. Thank you. I just had one follow-up question, but only if no one else is like waiting to talk. I don't want to hog up all the time.
There's no hands up. Let's hear what you got.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So then the other question I had, so if we have a model such as this, when we are tracking, and I think this is a general question, so there's a relationship between the contact and the program through this sort of, it's not a junction object because this is a lookup. If I'm tracking something about the participation, so if I'm tracking a assignment that the contact took as part of this program, or their attendance as part of this program, does it make more sense to have that data be a child of the contact with a lookup to the program, or be a child of the program with a lookup to the contact? Like how to decide where the additional information from this relationship should live?
I think I missed something as a follow-up question. So at the end of the day, it's still just a child object of both records. So it doesn't.
You're talking about the participation record?
Right. I mean, you're still going to have a child record that says this contact and this participation, or this contact and this program have this assignment.
Yeah. Correct.
You don't have to define anything more than the lookup as a lookup or a master detail, just to like help with the data structure, but they can both be lookups and work just as well. You don't have to decide that, I don't think, if I'm understanding your question.
Are you talking about this particular relationship? Are you talking about the master detail is that what you're talking about?
No, I mean, I guess I said I wanted to make sure I understood your question. I mean, in theory, in this,
I see.
You just create a new object that represents, what did you call it, an assignment?
Yeah, like an assignment or an attendance or anything that is like that comes from this contact participation in a program. So any kind of thing, like anything that you want to track that comes from this participation, if it makes sense for that to be a child of the contact, or that to be a child of the program, or program participation, or what you're saying is that it could just be lookups. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a child.
Well, they're all children. The lookup is just the type of relationship. They're still a child of the parent. It's just what the master detail versus the lookup does with that data relationship.
I see. Okay.
And I think if I'm understanding what you're saying, it makes sense to me anyway that you'd make it a child of both contact and participation, so you can differentiate different versions of the program and different opportunities to participate. You wouldn't want to link it to the program tier. You'd link it to the participation record.
Yes. So what I was saying is that it's the contact if the contact who's participating in this program, so if there's a program participation record, and that contact takes a survey or an assignment, from what I'm gathering, what you're saying is that it should have a lookup to both the contact and the program participation record. It shouldn't be confined to one or the other. It should kind of be attached to both. Is that correct?
I just wanted to make sure I understood your question. I would
Uh-huh.
say that unless you have a real good reason to connect it directly, it should probably be a child of only program participation, because you can then find your way up to contact through reporting.
I see.
Unless the reporting architecture suggests that you have to be able to go from contact to assignment regardless of participation, that's really where you start getting into the like long-term thought process of like what do they want to see? Because the example I'd have is, what happens if you need to start tracking assignments or attendance, but there's no participation? It still exists, but you can't get to it through the data architecture, and then you have some cascading decisions to make. And so I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were getting at. I think it probably has to be a child of participation at the bare minimum, and then decide if you also default branch off or not. So,
okay, yeah, that makes sense, because especially if like they want to, at the student profile level, be able to see all the assignments that they've ever submitted, then there would have to be a relationship to the contact as well, or maybe even not, because I know there's ways to now bring in details from child objects up to the parent object, or vice versa. I can't remember which one. So you're saying kind of think through how they need to like access the data and view the data, and then make that decision accordingly. There's no like right or wrong answer per se, but at the very least, it needs to go to the program participation record, because you can trickle up and kind of get to the contact from there.
Or the account, for that matter, right? Yep.
Yeah, okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. This is very helpful. What was your name? I just wanted to make sure that I thanked the right person.
Yeah, no, that's good. This is Squire.
Hi, Squire. Thank you so much for your help.
Of course. And Adi, if you have Twitter, if you want to drop a link into the chat in case you want to follow up with Adi as well with his initial ideas, there's no reason not to do that as well.
Yeah, okay, great. The polymorphic one. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And also that overall was just a great example. Adi, thank you for jumping in, because just because this is called MVP office hours doesn't mean that only MVPs get to answer the questions. If anybody on the call knows the answer, please, by all means, jump in. We're all here to help each other.
I got benefit from you guys. I will share my wealth.
I smell someone throwing out the pay it forward model, which I absolutely love.
Have a nice Friday, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your help.
Bye.
Are there any other questions out there?
Do we want to reach back to Marty's question in the chat, or Marty, you in a good spot?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks very much.
Marty Chang, actually.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No worries.
That's a fair point. There are two of us. I appreciate the question. I was definitely just more curious. It's something that's been on my mind, in that I was very surprised when I joined my company to see operations that were taking up to a minute, almost a minute, because it was basically before it got to a minute, it was timing out and causing a timeout error. And I'd never seen this before, and it was just very, very strange and a little unsettling. And so we have integration with Marketo and other systems that cause these large updates of hundreds or thousands of records, and it just made me wonder why I hadn't seen this before in all my time in the Salesforce ecosystem. So I was just curious if other people have noticed or have an idea how long it takes in their orgs to process inserts or updates of 200 records, accounts, and contacts specifically.
And it likely, like we put in the chat, usually the first culprit is an excessive amount of process that is waiting for a record update, whether that's a process builder going into a flow, whether that's triggers, whether it's even just workflow rules that then have that maybe maximize their 10 things you can do in a workflow rule. If there's field updates where reevaluate workflow rule upon execution is checked, it can get into a pretty messy spider web of things that maybe, going back to a word that Squire threw out earlier, refactoring, as each of these individual processes are developed, did the person who built yeah, I know English, I swear. Did the person who built it go back and reconsider what else was already going on? And then when you mentioned you have a Marketo integration or any number of other integrations, it's really easy to lose sight of what's already in place. No disrespect to developers, but there are the good developers will float up to the higher strategic level, and I'm going to throw admins in there as well, because even admins are developers, they just don't code. The good ones will always float up a few levels higher and take a look at the big picture to fully understand what am I building and how does it fit. Some just say, oh, you asked me to build this, so I built it. And that's how problems like this come up. I'm going to guess if you peel the layers off your process, you're going to find a whole bunch of automation waiting for record updates, so that when you throw that in data loader or .io or whatever you're using, I bet that's your culprit.
I appreciate that. I am curious, like, if anyone has seen slightly more detailed or prescriptive, like, do this, not that, kind of suggestions as orgs grow.
Always have visual documentation. Use flowcharts, use anything that you can that starts to piece all the dependencies of your org together. And I know that sounds like a Herculean effort, but start small and then let the things start to connect with each other. And then as you continue to add, make sure those diagrams are living documents. Make sure they do not get archived or saved for posterity, like saved for posterity's sake. They need to be living documents. That can be.
That reminds me, I think I think one of my colleagues is working on that. Keeping documentation up to date is, I'm sure everyone's favorite job.
Right. On the other end of it, utilize tools like Fieldtrip. There's Octopus. There's any number of tools. Like Octopus will help you get that documentation out as a starting point, and then use tools like Fieldtrip to start to evaluate your technical debt. What fields are not being used? Where can you start to trim down your org because those things are no longer applicable? Run a report on reports to find out what reports just aren't being run and being used, because then that will start to trickle back to, where is this field being used? Oh, nowhere. Okay, great. We can potentially get rid of that. Always have an eye open for reducing technical debt, because then that will make future development that much easier, and especially for refactoring.
I would take a look at the Salesforce Optimizer and setup. That can give you some ideas too.
And if you really want to have fun and give yourself a rabbit hole, turn on Finest functionality on the debug log and run the process, and then lock yourself in a room and go through all that, because it could be really informative about how it's like circularly referencing itself. You'll see where the calls are happening and stuff. It might help. That's like the last ditch effort though, because that can be a really painful process, but it's all there.
Right.
Yeah.
David.
Hey, Dale Squire, would validation rules that are succeeding would also, or that are not throwing errors, would also slow this down, because they're all getting tapped on the way through. So it's another pitfall that you want to take a peek at.
This is being recorded, so I'm not going to put the extreme level of how I feel about validation rules in it, but I'm not a fan of VRs simply because of all the downstream problems they can create.
Right. There's sticks instead of carrots, right? And so, but they can also like get in your way with the data loader. I've seen that a few times, and I will say that in the past, for a company I worked for a long time ago, I would just turn them off and do my stuff at night and then turn them back on.
And sometimes you have to do that. I mean, you're the admin, you know the responsibility that you're taking when you do that.
Yep. Wasn't what I wanted to do, but there's also other workarounds, like, that can help an admin bypass validation rules if you build those into the validation rules along the way. But it's just something to look at.
But also,
Thank you for the suggestions.
Also just remember though, as you take on this endeavor, try to find what chunks you can do. If you try to tackle the entire org at once, you're going to get overwhelmed. So start
Bananas.
start with digestible pieces, because going back to when you create your living documentation, your living flowcharts, any of those, the pieces will come together.
Mhm. Oh, we had a hand up and now it's gone. Bruno, did you still have a question or?
I did have a question, but I'm like, I know we're going to run out of time, right?
Well, let's hear it. Let's go quick.
Really? Okay. I'm going to,
Yeah.
I don't know. Normally, I mean, I'm a consultant, but I'm like Jared. I'm trying to get into the development side when I need to. In this case, I had a client saying, we'd like to integrate certain objects in Salesforce with, they say, okay, I'll make a web service that you can call. And now it's working in dev, everything's great. And they're like, let's push it to production. And part of the developer thing that I can't stand is test classes. They're so tough. So it is a bit of a developer question, but because I've got this RESTful API call that I'm doing, there's a mock class that you need to call because it can't really test web services. So I'm just having difficulty every time I'm trying to put it through. It's not much code that I've got here, but I keep running out. It keeps sort of going into my fail part of dev, and it doesn't go through the rest of my code. So I'm just wondering if I pop it up, if there's any developers that could probably say, here's zero issue quick here. Is this even the forum for it? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Let's just take a look. Maybe you're right.
Okay. If I don't mind sharing, I've got a couple text files
Yep.
here. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen.
As long as you're not showing us a production org, that's the
No,
only.
I am not.
Yeah.
This, like I said, I'm working on a test class here. So you can see my screen. I've got a mock class up at the top. This is what they sort of say to do to sort of test stuff. And here's my test class. So even if it's just talking about, the purpose of this mock, I don't know, because I think the idea is you can't sort of test this web service call. That's what I've heard. So you have to sort of fake it and fake the result back. But
Yep.
yeah, so when I run my test class and it's saying, no problem, but I'm only getting like 20% code coverage no matter what I do. So it's like, what am I doing wrong? I spent a whole day on it. And I'm like, this is why I'm not a developer. I should probably, even if you could point me into the right direction, if there's certain forms where I can get, I don't know. I'm just wondering if I
So
could.
the first thing I would offer is,
Yeah.
I believe there's a tool. Is this VS Code? I can't tell from what I'm looking at. Or is this just text, right?
This is just text that I've copied into these text boxes. Yeah, so I can pull.
Where do you do your work?
The work is in another class. That's basically, and it sort of takes, you call this thing that sort of says update ant, which is really an upsert. So ant is an object. And the idea is pass a few values, stuff like this. So there's your JSON. So there's a GUID, there's a couple of things. And then I take it and the code sort of says, match up this thing, update the rest of the information. If not, create a brand new one, that kind of thing. And it works great. It's just for testing purposes. So I'm trying to make a call into that, I guess you can say, and call this a mock class.
Sorry to cut you off. I know we're out of time.
Yep.
I guess what I was meaning is like, where do you write your code? Where do you do that work? Do you use Dev Console? Do you use JS?
Oh yeah, Dev Console. So always into Salesforce. Yeah.
So
not the fanciest.
So once you run the tests, you can click that button that shows you the lines that are actually being called in the test.
Correct. Exactly. And I'm seeing that it always falls into it failed sort of thing. So it's going into 20% because it's not getting through the meat of my code.
Sure. But you should be able to tell from the highlighting what isn't getting called and be able to refactor that test to make sure that you're continuing.
Right.
You with me there?
Yeah, I think the issue is that when I'm sort of processing the call into it, it's it's not getting what I'm trying to send it, I guess you can say. So I don't know.
Okay.
I probably just need more work on the documentation, but a day is a long time to keep working on this.
Yeah. I think what's probably happening is that your mock isn't giving you a return. I'm guessing because we're just looking at it. But your mock is probably not either not receiving the call or not getting the return. And so then you probably need to try catch somewhere to allow you to continue past it. It's probably just failing at the mock.
Oh, at the mock. Okay. That
would be my first guess. I mean, we could probably spend an hour and bore everybody to tears on it.
I don't want to. That's why I figured I'd wait to the end, and I even pulled my hand down. I'm like, maybe this isn't the right time, but appreciate you egging me on. I'll look at the mock. That's perfect. It's somewhere I can look at.
And then go from there.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right. With that, I think we're going to wrap things up. And then, do we have anything else you want to wrap up with, Dale?
No. Thank you, everybody. Please, please, please go to the admin preview. We put the link at the top of the chat. Have an awesome weekend. So 2 weeks from today is the first Friday of the month, so we will be back on our normal cadence of first and third Friday. Have an awesome weekend. Find us on the Success Community or on Twitter if you have any other questions. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great Friday.